22 at 2 p.m. This is the ordinance workshop of the Public Art Committee. We are in the second floor media room of City Hall. Megan, would you call the roll, please?
Vice Chair Robinson,
Here.
Mr. Meals,
Here.
Chair Jennings,
Here.
Mr. Sallow,
Here.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Stackhouse.
Here.
I am sorry to say that it is with deep regret that last night Diane and I accepted the resignation of Debbie Hennessy. She's gotten very involved in other activities which involve a lot of traveling. And it is also with deep regret that as of tomorrow, David Sallow will no longer be a member of the committee. Again, his work schedule is such that he does not feel he can give the time he'd like to the committee. So we're losing two great members. But thank you, David, for your service personally, and thanks Debbie for her contributions as well. We have three guests with us today. Would you all stand and be recognized?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Paul Smith. I'm the Public Services Director is my normal duties, but I'm also here in the capacity of the City Manager. He's not able to be in the office today. He's asked me to sit in, and also he's asked certain department heads to participate in this workshop as well. With me are Kevin Powell, Building Director, and if you can see Kevin, and Renee Vincent, Planning Director.
Renee.
As well.
Okay.
And so I'd just like to say, by way of background, if you don't know me, some of my other duties are providing support, advisement to the Sustainability Committee. So I do have some experience with advisory committees, also the Recreation Advisory Committee as well in the past. So we hope that you allow us to have some introductory comments when you get to this item and possibly make suggestions on how we can work through it together.
Okay. By the way, Paul, if you list all of your duties, I think we'd be here for a week.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the discussion to review the current ordinance and discuss the updates and changes to the public ordinance. I went over some of the discussions that we've had at past public art meetings concerning concepts and ideas that we were concerned about in the ordinance. And I took the liberty of actually making some changes to the ordinance, which I sent to Diane and Megan, and they're printed out and highlighted in red. I do want to draw your particular attention to page 3, about 2/3 of the way down the page. There is a line that ran together, and if you have your pens ready, I'd like to read what is unreadable. Basically, the sentence reads, "In addition, the committee is encouraged to have as one ad hoc non-voting member a high school or college student." Everybody up to this? "Who would sit as an observer of the Public Art Committee." Anyone need that to be reread? I'll just reread the whole sentence on general principles. "In addition, the committee is encouraged to have as one," and the numeral 1 in parentheses, "ad hoc, non-voting member, a high school or college student who would sit as an observer of the Public Art Committee." Everybody all set and okay with that?
Do you have as one
Yeah,
or to have one?
to have as one ad hoc, non-voting member. You could delete the as.
Yes, thank you.
But it's clearly in addition to the 5 regular and 2 alternates.
Right. We had an experience with a college student as a voting member, and it did not go well. But I think they should be encouraged to participate, but giving them the power to vote didn't work.
Diane, I'd go further than that and make it a college student. I think the kind of financial and social aspects that we deal with are, you know, it might be great education for a high school student, but
Well,
Well,
that's
can-
the purpose. It's really as an, you know, educational observation. Graham, you had,
Perhaps we could restrict it to seniors. And, you know, quite a few seniors, in my experience, are actually quite responsible individuals. And, you know, they're,
do you want to make it an age
You want to
thing?
just start at the beginning and then to have discussion when you get to this, or do you want to go ahead and address it now? Start,
Sure.
It's up to you.
yeah.
Okay, well, I thought, Paul, Renee, and Kevin, you'll be relieved to know I like to cut to the chase. Okay. As most of you are probably aware, also, we were given these notebooks that contain public art ordinances from various other committee, places and municipalities in Florida. And I could say with pretty much assurance that all of the boilerplate is pretty much uniform, and that comprise the definitions. So I imagine you all had a chance to look at this existing ordinance, and I think unless somebody has, a strong feeling about one of the definitions, that we could move past it. I did make 2 notes on the top of page 2 with points A and B, and I think we're going to defer to Robert for his expertise on this one. Reproductions, parentheses, accepting artists' limited edition of sculptures.
You want me to address that?
Please.
In bronze casting, this is more of the tradition of bronze casting, there are quite often 3 originals. You look at say famous bronze sculptures like Remington. Even the really expensive ones were not touched by Remington or his studio. They're casts of casts of casts. Now, in our situation, we're liable to run into a situation where you can purchase an original bronze sculpture, but there might be 2 others out there, generally. That should be, revealed. I mean, that should be our due diligence and their
Right.
fairness of things. And the purpose for that is, 1, you usually make a bronze sculpture as a commission. And then while you have the molds, you make another one to sell and another one to keep. That's usually the process. So, but not everybody does that anymore. And do we own any bronzes?
Well, the naiads.
The naiads are bronzes.
Well,
And
the reason I'm suggesting this phrase is because they were reproductions. And, and they were purchased, technically, if you really wanted to get picky about it, they did not follow the letter of the law in the ordinance, although, as Robert said, it's kind of traditional in bronze sculptures to have more than one edition, but they're still limited editions.
it's a limited, it should be numbered though as a limited, it's like,
Right.
it's like buying prints and,
Right.
really expensive prints. They tell you how many are out there to sell.
Right.
And they better not fool around with it.
And that is the case with the naiads as well as Storytime sculpture.
Exactly, so
Yeah.
the sentence would read, "The following shall not be considered artwork or works of art for purposes of this chapter." And parenthesis A would read, "Reproductions," parenthesis, "accepting artist limited edition of sculptures or unlimited copies of original artwork."
Well, why do we need unlimited in copies?
As being unacceptable.
But,
In other words, as
Any-
Robert
any-
said, a print.
yeah, but,
Why unlimited?
so.
Why not just copies?
Yeah,
What purpose does the word unlimited serve?
I would
Is the
just take the
question.
unlimited out.
Okay,
Is that-
and-
that was in the original one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Okay.
no, it was one of the changes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So-
Or unlimited. I
So
didn't read
would
the
it be,
red.
would it be better to, Sorry. Would it be better to say accepting artists' limited numbered editions
Do we have to be
based
that?
on what Robert just said, or just limited editions? Robert, opinion on that?
It's always good to just make very clear what you want, you know,
Yes.
and limit, unnumbered limited editions, but limited editions are something. I mean, I guess we run into the weeds here with something, because there's a lot of people that make prints nowadays, and they take photographs of their paintings, and then they
Well, this
frame
would
them
apply
up.
just for sculptures.
Yeah, well, sculptures too. I mean,
Right.
people will make these unlimited. You don't want them unlimited. I mean, that means they can just
Right,
keep
well,
making it.
that's- right.
That's in somewhere else in the contract, though. You can't make a direct copy of what you're selling to us.
Right.
I mean, you're restricted from that. You can make, this is where, again, it gets difficult in some of the contracts, is because some cities are really more severe in that requirement, and the artist will reject that because says, this is my body of work, I'm going to do variations of
Right,
this.
well, yeah, we're concentrating on tarpon today, but
Yeah, well, that's the
yeah.
issue you can run into. Somebody could make the naiads a little bit different, she could make it a little bit different
Mm-hmm.
than that and probably get away with it, or whoever did those.
Okay, well, I guess the question at hand is the word numbered necessary, or just, is unlimited editions enough?
You
Limited
don't want
editions.
unlimited editions.
Limited editions, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you want,
That's sufficiently restrictive.
I think that's sufficiently restrictive. I mean,
Okay, and the next one, B, art objects which are mass-produced, and then the addition of and/or commercially sold.
well, there you run into unlimited editions, probably.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean,
okay,
On the definitions, if I may,
yes, that's what,
I rather liked Robert's suggestion at the last meeting about the treatment for the triangular parcel at the gateway area, down by the supermarket.
right.
And I noticed that we do not have a definition for landscaping type projects. And I did like the one that Bonita Springs has, which says, special landscape treatment means the highest application of skilled and aesthetic principles to create unique planted or designed areas which may include earthworks, gardens, pavings, and water features not normally associated with public facility landscaping. And I thought we might want to throw something like that in.
Okay, so you want to
Gainesville
supplement,
uses that as well. Gainesville uses that as well.
Yeah.
And it really does emphasize,
okay, so you want to add to item C.
No, not,
Yeah, works that are decorative, ornamental, or functional element of the architecture or landscape design. Right? So you want to alter
No.
that?
No, because you're in the bit on shall not be considered artwork. Right? And you've got that list there of including but not limited to paintings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, monuments erected.
It's
And artist-designed cedars and
landforms or
pavers.
landscape elements. So you
And
wanna
artist-designed
supplement.
landforms or landscape elements. Yeah, I think we want to, I would like to supplement that, perhaps.
would that fall in item 15 under streetscapes? I mean, is that something that you'd want to look at?
Well, that's very restrictive, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
passageways including streets, boulevards, and alleyways.
Well, that, remember, these are
passageways.
definitions. Right, these are
Yeah,
definitions.
I mean, that definition could go down here as,
Yeah.
But, excuse me, if you look at the very top, right before A, these things that are listed, it says the following shall not be
Right.
considered artwork
Oh,
Yeah.
or works of
okay.
art.
So it has to go
You have to
before-
remember where, we
Right,
gotta
right.
Yeah.
where we're gonna put it,
Okay.
yeah. So you would put it under definitions, Graham, is that correct?
Yeah, what I would do is where it says artist-designed landforms or landscape elements, I would replace that with special landscape treatments and then define special landscape treatments just below that. as an additional definition on the list here. Number 18 or whatever. And that would be the text from either Gainesville or Bonita Springs, whichever.
Okay.
I don't really care.
Gainesville, let's do Gainesville. Okay. Yeah,
Except that if we're going to do the Bonita Springs one, I'd like the spelling error corrected.
Yeah. Gainesville's was a little bit better edited.
All right, let's stick with Gainesville then.
Yeah.
We'll go back and revisit this, but I want to make a first pass.
Okay.
Okay. The next section, 289, deals with the committee itself. And kind of to bring the inserted sentence into uniformity with point 4. That last sentence, it shall be a high school or college student who, if under the age of 18, shall be an ex officio non-voting member. So the words ex officio non-voting are inserted.
But it doesn't matter about their age. They are to be ex officio no matter how old they are.
True, so let's delete that, thanks. If any of you have comments, Paul, Kevin, Renee?
Thank you. Our first comments, I think, going to be coming up in, is it 280? Let's see, a few more pages along.
Okay,
Yeah, 291 or after. Thank you.
okay. Well, no,
Did
sorry.
you want any comments on these as we go along, or are you gonna
Or I
do a
want to do a
cursory
first
go
pass.
through?
Right, I want to do a first pass.
Okay.
I'm throwing your sticker in.
That's all right.
Okay.
No, I thought we'd do a first pass and then go back and re-examine it in detail. Does that make sense to people?
That's fine.
Sure,
I
as
just
long-
did,
yeah.
I
Yeah, no,
wasn't sure.
I also don't want to
Okay.
tie everybody up. Okay, let's move along to 291, Public Art Project Juries.
Can we back up to 290, powers and duties of the committee, paragraphs 4 and 5?
Okay. Okay, authorize, okay.
This ordinance was passed in 2007. There's been increases in the cost of living, inflation, et cetera, since then. And I suggest that the 15,000 authorized expenditure should, in order to keep pace with changes in cost of living, be now 20,000.
Okay,
You're on page 4, Graham?
I'm on page 4.
Four, yeah.
I'm at 290.00A4 and 290.00A5.
Okay. Actually, the 15,000 was recently changed.
Was it?
Yeah,
That wasn't the original amount?
no.
Okay, fine.
You know, and the thing is, remember that, just about everything else has to be approved by the Board of Commissioners, so.
Sure.
It's not that we can't spend it, but, okay. 291, the Public Art Project juries, under A, may appoint at least 3 or up to 7 jury members. So up to 7 instead of up to 5.
Joan, would you qualify the purpose of the jury and as opposed to the Public Art Committee? Like, for instance, maybe citing the Black Heritage
yeah.
Project, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, it's under C, the jury shall make recommendations to the committee. So I think that's defined further down,
Okay.
okay? Also, I'd like to add, under B6, or a member of the board of the Tarpon Springs Area Historical Society if the project has historical references or significance. Renee?
Any differentiation between the regular historic district and the Greektown Historic District, Cultural District? That's a different, they're not really, the Greektown District does not fall under the purview of the, well, that's the Historical Society, so it's just a differentiation that seems to be getting
Oh, good
traction,
point.
so, and just
Right.
let it, yeah.
Right,
There's another board out there, or another group that
Right.
is focused on this. the Greek
Okay, so what would your suggestion be on the wording of that?
I don't really have a suggestion, I'm just want to make sure that you're aware of.
Thank you,
this
yeah.
other group, that they are a not-for-profit, group for
Mm-hmm.
the Greektown Historic Area, so.
Right, that does have a designation, right? Right, okay.
Perhaps we could make that paragraph more generic by saying a member of, any interested group, or
No, that's
something
too
like that.
loosey. It would have to be spelled like the Historic Preservation Board, Historic Preservation District, wouldn't you say, Renee?
Well, so, I mean, the Historical Society is not really, it's not a city-driven group, that's their own group.
Okay, so shall we delete that?
Yes.
I'm just, my only thing was just recognizing that you're calling out the Historical Society as an entity for something that's in the Historic Preservation District.
Right,
We also have a Greektown Historic District and a separate group out there that's kind of the shepherd for that area. So, however you want to resolve that, it's up to you guys. I just wanted to make sure you were aware.
Wouldn't we cover that under representative of the neighborhood where the project is to be located?
Yes.
Perhaps, yes. Yeah, I think you would.
So do we strike number 6, or,
no,
no?
No, strike the red stuff, the addition.
Okay.
yeah, okay, so the red stuff goes out, okay.
Strike the red.
Yeah.
Is there,
after
may I ask, is there any reason for increasing the size of the jury from 5 to 7?
Because we currently have a 7-person jury sitting on the Black Heritage Project.
Okay.
It was more of an attempt to get a wider cross-section. It doesn't have to be 7, but it expands it. After 4, would it be appropriate to put a representative of the neighborhood where the project is to be located, such as the Greektown Historic District? Should we spell it out, or just?
Just leave it be.
Well,
Yeah.
that can be interpreted broadly. I think if we're
Okay.
doing a project, say at Cycadia, we might want to involve, or Rose Cemetery, we might want to involve an interested party. So,
Yeah, good point.
without
Yes.
specifying a specific board, you're drawing in the,
Okay, so just leave it the way it is, open-ended.
I like
Yeah.
that. If we're doing a project at Cycadia, we should put a dead person on the committee.
It
have a
just,
few
no.
nominations.
it just says we should strive to appoint a variety of persons as jurors, including a representative of the neighborhood where the project is to be located. So that says wherever it is, you're going to do it. I don't see
Okay.
how you have to add anything.
Okay, and then C, to bring it up to uniformity, 3 to 7 jurors.
And similarly F.
Right. Thank you. Getting ahead of me, Graham.
Sorry.
Will be beaten. Okay. All right. Paul, you said you had something to address in section 291?
Thank you, Renee, got that one, but we do have something in 292.
Okay. Okay, the committee procedures. Okay, one of the things I was thinking about was under C, to insert the word, or to delete the word successive.
So that would be 2 of 3.
Well, no, it would just be 3 meetings.
So
Sorry.
you'd want to delete
Delete
the
that,
words
sorry, yeah.
2 of
Right,
as well.
right. Fails to attend 3 meetings, and we could probably put maybe within the calendar year.
Would it be 2 consecutive?
Looks like she wants to make it any 3 meetings out of the 12
but without cause.
without.
Yeah, I think that says that, without
Without
cause and
cause and
without
without
prior.
approval.
Yeah, that's, okay.
That was gonna be our suggestion, is that you do put a time frame for that 2 or 3 if you take successive out, so you were thinking
Right.
within a year.
Right,
Okay.
within a year. Thank you, Paul.
Is that going to be within a budget year or within any rolling 12-month period?
The fiscal year?
The fiscal year?
We kind of go by the calendar year for the committee, but we can do whatever you'd like.
I think board appointees generally follow the calendar.
Okay, calendar year. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Diane. Okay, keeping us honest here. Okay. Paul, did you have any of you guys have any comments about 292, other than the one you made?
Nothing else there.
Okay. 293, removal of members. I added a sentence, the chairman may remove a member for excessive absences from scheduled meetings and workshops at his or her discretion.
Yeah, this is not recommended by us at all. I
Okay.
think it's a procedural problem. I think the board appoints members, and they would need to be the one to remove the members.
Ah, great, okay, so that gets deleted. Thanks, Paul. Okay,
Also, it's already covered under 292C.
right, okay. 294, artist selection methods. What I did uniformly throughout was to add the words digital images and/or open slide registry. I don't think anybody uses slides anymore. Robert?
I have some somewhere.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, should we just use digital images and,
Well, somebody's gonna do that once in a while, you know, just like sometimes you get just original drawings, you know, somebody's gonna maybe send a slide. You can get slides made yet in places,
Right.
Why can't we just simplify it and say images?
images.
okay.
Because, you
Well,
know,
but the thing is, it's the registry. Do you, I mean, Diane, do you want it like the possibility of a pile of actual prints? That's
Well,
why I went with
we actually do have
Oh, I
paintings.
know, but do you
yeah.
want, do you want more? That's why I said,
Yeah, we don't really have the
well, these are
storage,
for
you know.
submissions.
Yeah, I had a question about the registry, and it may not be time yet, but is that a practical approach still in this age of electronic and calls for artists and that kind of advertising?
I'd like to put that on the next agenda to discuss the registry, because I feel like, you know, we need to do so, because I've got lots of paintings that need to
That-
be dealt with, so, anyway,
you have lots of original paintings
that we're
But-
donating, yeah.
that are
Some
sent to you as proposals, or?
Yeah, they're in your package, so, but we can talk about it at another meeting, yeah, but I think it's a good idea.
That could be a legal issue.
Let's
Yeah, we'll
talk about it at
discuss
the
in
next
another
meeting.
meeting.
The,
Right now, this is just dealing with format, digital
The-
images
Format.
and/or slides.
the problem with putting it off to another meeting is that if you leave the ordinance unchanged, then, you know, the wording is clear. The Public Art Committee shall establish and shall maintain the registry.
Well, we are talking about two different things. This is like when the artist selection methods, so that has nothing to do with what has been donated and accepted by the public art in the past, committee in
Okay.
the past. So this is more about the submissions. So, I mean, it would be a lovely thing if it could be digital, but as, you know, we just saw with the Black Heritage application, he did do a lot of drawings. So, you know, those are easily scannable, so.
Right.
Not sure it really matters too much, you know, I don't want anybody bringing in a, you know, huge painting to say, okay, take this to the next Public Art Committee meeting, you know, so.
Right.
But, you know, I'm sure that artists nowadays are probably up on technology in order to be competitive.
But am I safe in assuming that we are all okay with the insertion of digital images?
Yes.
Yeah.
Until they're not
I
any.
think the bigger question remains, which
There's
is
something else.
an artist registry practicable right now anymore?
I don't think we've ever used it in the time that I've been on the committee.
I mean, why make it a burden on staff to maintain something that's not functional?
How about if we change the words shall in paragraph B to may? And then it becomes entirely optional, and if it just disappears and dies, then nobody will care.
That's a good idea.
So change all shalls to may.
Yes.
Committee may partner with them. Okay, and let's see, at the bottom of page 8, number,
The, now I'm going to argue the other side of that.
okay,
Okay. Is what if an artist writes to the Public Art Committee or the Director of Cultural and Civic Services and says, would you please put me on your list for consideration for any projects that may be coming up in the future? If you don't have a registry, where are you going to put them?
And what we've been doing is the proposal, with
Yeah, we
the
have a-
monetary amounts.
yeah, we have a mechanism for unsolicited proposals, but not for unsolicited artists.
Yeah.
Do we want to start that?
Have you ever had one?
I think the registry kind of serves as that,
Mm-hmm.
I think I've had one artist in the last 7 years that has actually asked to be on the registry. So, they gave me their information and then I archived it, so.
So the may probably covers it anyway. Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any of you guys back there have any comments about this? Okay. Bottom of page 8, number 5, going into page 9. This has to do with fee schedules. If asked to develop a proposal, an artist may be paid a proposal fee on the basis of an approved fee schedule, and I would like to add, this proposal fee is contingent upon prior authorization of the Public Art Committee and negotiated prior to the artist undertaking the work. We did have an issue with this in the past, that's why I want to include it. I think it's pretty clear-cut. Renee, anybody, Kevin, Paul? You're okay with that? Okay. 295, artist selection criteria, maximum visual accessibility to pedestrian, or I wanted to add local vehicular traffic, excluding highway speeds of 35 miles an hour plus locations. Anyone? Anyone down there? Okay, now we're getting to the big kahuna.
Why we're here.
That's what I figured, okay. Art design standards for development and redevelopment, okay. Having looked at a lot of the proposals from other municipalities, there was a suggestion to drop the aggregate job value of $1 million to $250,000. And totally eliminating the option for developers to provide art. Paul, I see you at the podium.
Thank you for recognizing me. Yes, we've got concerns. I say we have from multiple fronts on this as staff. One is lowering that amount. We believe that the current amount is appropriate. You start lowering the amount, it's going to have a chilling effect on, there's a whole lot of detail that I'm not even familiar with, and I'll ask Kevin to just provide a little more background on the development financing process and how it could really affect some of those smaller projects to get the financing if they've got to come up with that money up front. So it's not only that, but there's also the administrative part of trying to now we're gonna have a lot more of these permits being subject to the requirements. So
Okay.
I will say, on the plus side, that it is verifiable. You know, there was a concern that maybe some of these projects that are borderline are figuring out ways to value their project under a threshold. But, you know, in speaking with Kevin, they've got ways with accepted pricing that they can go through the project plans and verify those estimates so that we can be confident that that amount is appropriate and that we're capturing enough of the projects. Similarly, I noticed, Madam Chair, your comment at the bottom about pay it prior to issuance of building permit. That gets back to the financing concerns, and that we already do have some changes to ordinance consistent with state statutes that require it prior to final inspection. So we would recommend that wording instead. But
Okay.
if you'd like to hear a little more about the concerns with the 250 or really anything much lower than $1 million, I'd like to ask Kevin to add to what I'm saying.
Kevin?
Good afternoon, Kevin Powell, Building Development Director. So when we look at the cost of construction, I know there are some projects that people had concerns about here, and we have a table that we go from the International Code Council called the ICC valuation table. So we can take the square footage type of construction, and we can look at that. And we do verify the buildings based on that. Yes, construction costs are higher. However, this is a nationwide average that is an accepted practice, and it's also within ordinance, so that's what we go by. So that's on that end. Now, when we start looking at projects at $250,000 and the financing of projects, you know, everybody wants to look at, well, they're a business person, they've got a lot of money. Well, it's financing. So they're now adding that somewhere in their budget, going to the bank up at the very beginning saying, oh yeah, besides the permit fees, I need another $25,000, $50,000, $60,000 up front prior to me breaking ground. Financial institutions are going to have an issue with that.
Right.
So that's why, based on state statute with fees, about 2 years ago, they put that out where we would collect those prior to final inspections. And what that does for us is if they don't pay, they don't get final inspections, they don't get their power, they've already got their project that far, you know, they're into it for a lot of money, and banks are going to go ahead and pay
Right.
that. So those are factored in. It's just that upfront fee that they're looking at, you know, potentially up to $75,000 of going to the bank investors and saying, oh yeah, by the way, I need an additional $75,000 on the $5,000 worth of permitting I just did. So those are the concerns that, you know, from the contracting side of it, those are
Right.
concerns.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your expertise. Renee, do you have any comments
Nothing
on that?
really other than
I,
what's been said.
I think.
Oh, wait, just a minute. Lucienne, we'll go in order. Lucienne, do you have any thoughts on this?
I just want to reflect that with all of the ordinances we've looked at, there is a huge variation in limits. Some of them start at 250 to 500, and at those levels, the percentage in one case is as high as 2%.
Right.
And then the percentage diminishes as the project grows to $10 million. There's one city in here that actually assesses the fee on a per square foot basis, so many cents per square foot. So I guess what I'm saying is if it's understood from the beginning, we can always adjust the actual payment date to, you know, the certificate of occupancy rather than load it on the front, if that's the major concern.
Well, I mean, when we collect is one thing, because, you know, I've got statute to go by. And Florida statute says that, you know, we can't force them to pay up front. They can pay by, and so we changed the ordinance to say you've got to pay prior to final inspections.
Right.
So when it comes to what percentage we use, square footage, or however that is, we have to look at, you know, the small business going in. You have it at $250,000. You have small franchise business going in. Marco's Pizza went in next to Winn-Dixie. That was probably a $250,000 build out on there. There again, it's a small business going in, and what percentage are you charging them? Are they prepared for that? So that's why they were saying, I guess, you know, keeping it at the $1 million versus taking it down to the 250. It's just, you know, looking at the small business end of it as to what is the expectation of you to now have an additional cost on trying to open that franchise business?
Okay. Yeah, because the 1% would come to 2,500 on a 250,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's, opening a business, especially in a franchise, everything is tight until they get up and running.
Right, Renee?
I think, just as I was sitting here, we hadn't talked about this, but another thing that comes into play, and we see a lot of, especially on redevelopment projects, and Kevin can probably speak to this, we have so much of our city that's in flood zones, and so a lot of times people are also getting hit with FEMA requirements, so if we're gonna tag them for, a public art fee on top of trying to get their buildings up to FEMA code stuff, so I think just, sometimes I think it's like, the perception may be piling on, I guess, is a good term. The other thing, I think it's interesting, and I haven't looked at all the other codes, but I would be interested to know on their calculations, especially the one that's using like a fee per square foot. That's a much more easy thing for everybody to calculate. A contract comes in with, or building permit comes in with a contract amount. Now we can verify stuff, but there are things that are a lot harder to verify, like site construction costs. So if there's an easier way to calculate and assess versus trying to figure out if a contractor is, blowing smoke on the cost for a site construction permit for a new subdivision, I think some of those things might be helpful. I'd like you to
Right.
see what some other jurisdictions are doing, just so that it's a fairer way, I guess, or an easier way to calculate a value.
Right, that's what
Yeah,
this was
so,
about.
and I haven't gone through
Right,
those
I
yet,
know.
so, just,
Bill?
Well, one of the other things I saw, especially, I think it was called out, the city of Tampa, they considered it to be a charitable donation, as opposed to, a fee. I mean, the people are looking at it in many different lights.
Sure.
And again, as we looked at the numbers, it seemed like from 250 to $1 million was, pretty much the range across all of the different
Right.
cities and municipalities that we looked at. Is it much more palatable to look at the $500,000 as opposed to 250,000? Do we hit a threshold somewhere that, in your calculations at all, Kevin?
250, $500,000, $750,000, whatever that comes out to. And I didn't even really think about that until Renee said, about the FEMA stuff. We're more than 50% in a special flood hazard area. The old fruit stand there on Alt 19, you notice how long that sat there vacant?
Yeah.
They spent a lot of money in FEMA mitigation on that building. So then to, put another expense on that, at least now they're bringing that property, into a nice viable business, in the future. But yeah, they did have to put a lot of money into the FEMA regulations to be able to build there.
Are you
So that's
talking about
something
the
else.
one at Oakwood?
No, it's right next to the bank on MLK. The old gas station fruit stand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's at
it's
Oakwood.
At Oakwood,
Yeah,
yes. So that building sat vacant for as long as it did because of FEMA guidelines or FEMA regulations.
Yeah, and in the redevelopment world, not only that, just, change of occupancy types and things that can kick in ADA compliance and things. So a lot of times they're just, these developers are, especially a redevelopment project, are the ones that are really, I think, I think they get surprised when they walk through the door and they start figuring out what they've got to do between FEMA, ADA, building code upgrades and things like that. And all that goes into the cost of the permit, and the way ours is written, then all that factors into to the public art fee. So, maybe a trade-off there is looking at some of those redevelopment things, as, less of a focus than, or a higher amount. I'm just trying to look for,
Right.
what's a good balance, and I don't know what that is
Right. What
now,
about-
so.
Right, what about the ability to deduct the FEMA and ADA
From the cost,
from the aggregate job value?
that might might be.
That-
that's
that-
just-
Would
that's-
that be fair?
And I was looking through some, and I did see a few municipalities that had on their redevelopment a different
Right.
price structure on it. You know, we're
Okay.
just at one level. You know, we're $1 million and you're paying, you know, up to, you know, this amount, or, you know, up to $75,000 once you go over that.
Right,
For
right,
the maximum amount.
Redevelopment's hard anywhere.
right,
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
especially
what
here
we've
with the
got a lot
FEMA.
of.
Yeah, and these folks are dealing with a lot of FEMA issues here. And a lot of jobs just pretty much die on the table because they cannot come up with that additional cost to mitigate those flood issues.
right.
So that's, you know, something we have to also consider.
Okay, Graham?
Yeah, I too had noticed that there were, in some of the municipalities, there are differences between development and redevelopment. And I was going to suggest that we set the lower limit at, say, 750 for new development and $1 million for redevelopment, and just assume that it's going to cost, you know, 250 for FEMA and flood mitigation and what have you, or thereabouts, which I think would be, you know, probably reasonable.
Yeah, and that's probably realistic on some of these when you've got to get into
Yeah.
dry flood proofing. You know, it's a complete engineer architect design. You know, so yeah, there is a lot that goes into that. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually a pretty reasonable thing, I think.
And, you know, 750 for the new development would catch the, you know, the folks who throw up a new bank on the corner.
They fell below that we checked it.
Yeah.
You know, but in today's construction cost, it may be, you know, more than that. But when we go and look at because we looked at what they came in at, and then we compared that to the ICC valuation table, and actually the ICC was lower than what their cost of construction was. But as material keeps rising, how do we price that? You know, 6 months, a year from now, that material is going to come back down again.
Right.
You know,
Hopefully,
it's just,
yes.
it's just a cycle right now.
One other question I have about this paragraph is that there's a cap of $100,000 of the fee raised. And I'm wondering if, let's just take to pull some numbers out of the air, let's say somebody wanted to spend $94 million building a 405 apartment block somewhere in Tarpon. And their fee would be capped at $100,000. Do we think that that's reasonable, or should the commission have the option to increase that rather than it be restricted by statute? I'm not sure whether this committee should have the option to increase that, or whether it should be by, you know, by ordinance that it should be greater than that. But I'm thinking that the commission may want the option to increase that themselves. Because at the moment, what is the fee that they get for, you know, street improvements and things like that? Is like, on that particular project, it's like 500,000. It's not very much.
You mean like the impact fees?
The impact fees, yeah, that's it.
The total impact fees, I don't remember what that number is, but I wanna say it was in like the 275,000 range?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing really.
Yeah, don't quote me on that one,
Yeah.
I haven't drilled that one.
Yeah, I seem to remember it being well under 500,000. And I was thinking that, you know, for that kind of development where you're talking about if you, let's say you capped it at 250,000, that's still only $400 per apartment, which is nothing when you consider they're going to be selling them for $350 and up.
You also got to take into account, that's not the only impact fee on those apartments. There are additional costs that go on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of other fees that go into their fire, police, library, roads. So it's more than that per apartment.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's just something to consider also when you look at it. You know, giving the board or the ability to say, I'm going to charge you to whatever I want to charge you. I don't know, everything I've seen pretty much caps out just thumbing through the book, it looked like everything capped out right at around 100,000.
Right. David?
So, in hearing everybody speak about this, I was thinking the possibility of bringing it to 500,000 and making the FEMA stuff for redevelopment exempt. I thought that was a pretty good idea. Like we're saying, some of these costs might be flying under the radar a bit, and that would keep the small business from getting hit as well. Just as well as that cost being on the front end, it is very hard to get the doors open. So on the back end, before final inspection, I think that would be a proper way of doing business as well.
Robert?
The difference between $1 million and say $750,000 or $500,000 down to $250,000, I think, I tend to understand the small bin. I mean, I've dealt with projects that are in that range, and I don't want to have to pay for that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not building a building, but I can understand the cut of that goes into things. But I also think that one of the things about this workshop is that we're really talking about the importance of art to a community. And it's always the art that gets sort of pushed back because there's all these other fees. And these fees are important, but so is the art. And it's a mindset, I think, of having more input from the community, people coming in to Tarpon Springs because it has an identity. And the identity is enhanced a lot, not just by new shops, new buildings, and things like that, and new commerce, but it's also about the ambience of the community. So the $1 million is fine, how many $1 million projects do you have as opposed to how many $500,000 projects? And there's where I see an uptick in what can be the look of Tarpon Springs. And so, whatever the costs are, I think we always tend in, and I always see that the costs that can enhance the arts are always pushed back. And they're always pushed back, and yet that's one of the things that people say they like about a community, is the arts, is the involvement of the community in the arts. And if that can be a mindset that we can set in this thing, I mean, I've noticed with a lot of these discussions about what the city is doing looking forward, art is not even mentioned. I mean, because there's all these other things that come in front of it. There's all these other things, but art is something that when you look back and you look at what's the 10 most desirable cities or towns to live in, quite often art is a good reason why. It's not just the fact that they're growing with small businesses, and it's that those small businesses are involved in the arts itself. So that is a commitment, I think, to the community.
Paul?
If I could add one more thing to the mix that I didn't bring up in the beginning, it isn't just the financial impact on the financial part of the development, but there is an administration component to this. Whenever you're making an ordinances, you have to think about enforcement and administration of these things. And, while that subtracting out the FEMA cost idea is great, it's like, well, who would do that? Who would verify it? You'd have a lot more of these things being processed. It would just have a real administrative impact. We do think that the $1 million, it's a nice clean way to get a significant contribution to art in the community. And we recommend to keep that where it is for those reasons.
Okay. Should we vote on this?
I think we should go through everything.
Okay. Okay, section B was deleted in its entirety. Okay. C, that number will be revisited to reflect the figure arrived at that we just discussed. And C3,
May I?
Well, just let me read it. Provided that A, the application is approved within 6 months of the date of application, and B, construction begins within 6 months of the issuance of such approval and is diligently pursued to completion. All right, let's, Lucienne, do you, no, Bill, anything? Graham?
I think what you're trying to say, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you don't want anybody who thinks that they're operating under the old version of the ordinance to be disappointed if there are some changes in the new version and all of a sudden they have to cough up more money. And what you want is that you'd like everybody who's already qualified under the old ordinance to be grandfathered in, and and all the new stuff be, under the new ordinance.
Well,
Would that be
I
about
believe
right?
there's nobody has that status at the moment.
But how long will this take to be enacted, and
Right.
what can
Months.
happen?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that, I think one of the reasons that we want to expedite this as much as possible is the deletion of Section B. And, I mean, I think it's come up a couple of times in these meetings, and, to some extent, it's been kind of humorous, but it is pointed, because, we seem to have, a glut of car washes, and, for them to say that they're interpreting, car wash valve B as a water-featured public art installation, this is the type of thing we want to avoid. And even, a number of developer-supplied, public art projects along 19 itself does not lend itself to our mission as spelled out in the ordinance. So, yeah, but you're right, Graham, it was just basic. I don't believe there are any projects that could be grandfathered at this point. We don't have any approved projects, before our committee, anyway.
Yeah, it's just that the city manager was saying last night that attempting to get anything into the agenda for the commission before sometime in August or September would be extraordinarily difficult.
Well,
Yeah,
the other wrinkle, I just wanna make sure you're aware of, this section of, I guess I should be at the podium. This section of the code is actually in the land development code. And so any ordinance change in the land development code must also go through the planning and zoning board for review and recommendation of the board. So it's just another step in the process. It's just wanted everybody to be aware of that.
Okay, so we really have to get on this. Paul?
Wanted to back up a step and just talk about the deletion of B. So we've got some real concerns with that. We believe that leaving options to the developer is integral to this being sustained as a public art ordinance. We do believe that this committee, I almost said sustainability committee, this committee has the power to review these things and approve or disapprove them. So with that, we would recommend keeping this option in. We think it's part of leaving choices with oversight to the development. And we feel strongly about being concerned about deleting it.
Reviewing the ordinances from a lot of the other municipalities, I think we are one of the few that allow this. So we did look at precedent from other municipalities before, even considering the deletion. So, I don't know, I think, as I said, this is the big kahuna. This might be a sticking point.
Yes, if I could suggest, and this is just my opinion, if there are ways you all will be comfortable fortifying your review process of these things, if you feel like there's been shortfalls in the process that you're not able to have comment on, like the car wash example you just gave, maybe that's a way to do it, but still preserving that option with the limitations that would work for you.
Well, so far, the only project that invoked this was Icaria. And that was quite a while ago. And they did, bring the artist, the proposal, and everything else before the Public Art Committee. And we did have a chance to vet the sculptor, and, as you said, there is a process involved. And the thing is, my concern is that art is a very subjective thing, and I know that you guys are used to dealing with black and white hardtack, you know, even the Sustainability Committee, you're dealing with enforcing rules and regulations. We're a lot more squishy, if you will. And that's why, you know, as I said, it came out as a joke, but, you know, having somebody say, you know, my car wash alley is a, you know, a water-featured public art. Who's to say it isn't? You know, I think we don't want to get into those kinds of controversial subjects. And as I said, we're probably one of the few municipalities, if any, that even allow it.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure, Annette.
Oh, sorry, throwing things around.
We
On
fine
the-
you for that.
On the, on the review, on the other ordinances that you guys are reviewing and referencing, where does ours fall in the lineup of when they were adopted? Is ours earlier, later, or no?
About in the middle there,
About in the
over a
middle?
20-year
Yeah.
period.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that really isn't a factor.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was just curious.
There's been, you're right, there's been an evolution, and there, I think a lot of ordinances have been revised.
Yes.
But there's another real issue here, aside from the car wash, and that is public access. And
Sure.
we do have a current project whose public access is very questionable. And had we had the ability to say, no, you don't have the option to develop it on this tiny little parcel that nobody will see in actuality, that money, even limited to 100,000, could have been applied someplace in town for far
Oh,
greater good.
I understand where you guys are coming from. We're just looking at it from the how much pushback you may get, and so there's another, and this will be more for the city attorneys to opine on. I certainly am not an expert on it, but there are, you know, our legislature has put some things in place over the last couple of years that, you know, if a property owner or if business feels like that a new ordinance or a change to an ordinance is going to adversely affect them, then they can challenge that. So we're kind of coming at this too from the standpoint of, ooh, are we opening ourselves up to a challenge? So, and that's for the attorneys to really weigh in on, not me.
I think you're kind of bolstering our point, which is that if it's in the ordinance, then we don't have to fight that battle on a review process or a policy basis.
I think everybody's pantry has a can of worms.
Yeah,
May I?
absolutely.
May I?
Yes.
In paragraph A, it says aggregate job values of up to $1 million must allocate not less than 1% of the aggregate job value. In paragraph B, it says if you're subject to paragraph A, right, then the developer shall have two options. He can either contract with an artist and the contract with the artist and the provision of the artwork is subject to this committee's review, or he can ignore completely that at least not less than 1% and contribute a 0.75%. Now, anybody who isn't completely nuts would say, okay, so really what they want is 0.75%. This 1% is absolute BS. I'm going to give them 0.75%. Now, for that reason, I want paragraph B stricken because it just doesn't make any sense as to why anybody would come in under paragraph A.
And yet some have.
Well, you know, I mean, I can't explain that, you know. Maybe some people volunteer to help out, but it does not make any sense.
Right. Well, the
No
oth-
argument.
Okay. Well, the other thing too, as I said, the only so far since I've been sitting on this committee, it's been a while, that actually utilized paragraph B has been Icaria, and fortunately they are in public view. You know, so it does fall within what we would consider a public art project in terms of Tarpon Springs,
The hospital, too.
and the hospital also. Right.
I was was gonna say, as the benefit of an outsider, and I could speak incorrectly here, but to me, how this strikes me is if you wanna really embrace public art and work with us, you have this option, if you wanna take the easy way out, and just pay us the cash, that it would be 0.75, and I think it does separate out the people that really wanna be part of the process, but I do understand your point of, it seems like an inverse motivation.
Right.
Yeah, it's actually not really 1% at all. It's, you can spend whatever you like as long as the committee approves, or it's 0.75%.
Well, the other thing too is when you're talking in terms of the aggregate job value, even 1% is, 1% versus 0.75%. What are we talking about? Probably not even enough for lunch these days.
Well, no, but I think that rather than be self-contradictory, our ordinance should be self-consistent.
Right, that's what we've been trying to do throughout here.
I think it would help.
Yeah, but I know, as far as I'm concerned, and I think, I'd be willing to do, a call for a motion, a second, and a vote would be to strike paragraph B. I think I'll do that. Can I have a motion? Anyone?
I move we strike paragraph 296.00B
Do I have a
in its
second?
entirety.
Bill? Okay, now we can have a discussion. I don't know, I feel that it should not be an option. I think we are an outlier in terms of, other, and they're all from Florida, other Florida municipalities, cities of varying sizes, including comparable cities to Tarpon Springs in terms of population. And I just think allowing this really muddies the waters. Lucianne?
I'd like some clarification. If we strike B, I don't see the language that allows 1% or 0.75% to be paid into the fund. Am I missing that?
Well, I guess it's in the line above. Not less than 1% of the aggregate job value up to the sum of,
And we have this fee must be, in the new language, we have this fee must be paid
Paid.
prior to the final inspection in the new language. It
So it's the
wasn't spe-
second
it
part of
wasn't-
A.
It wasn't specified previously.
So B2 stays in.
No,
no.
no.
Where is the language that requires payment into the public art fund?
In A. The sum of $100,000 per project for the provision of public art. This fee must
Okay,
be paid
I-
prior to final inspection.
My apology, yeah.
That's right. Bill, you have any?
Well, I think what highlighted this for me was when we had the presentation by the one developer, and we really saw no reason why we could say no to it, but there was limited public access, and it was gonna be, along 19, and have no real value, and the frustration with that, based upon the ordinance, leads me to say we've gotta do something with it.
Right.
So.
David?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that it basically gives them a way to beautify their project and fold it into an art project.
Right. Robert?
I just think that they should give the money to us and let us do it.
Okay. Megan, would you call the roll, please? We have do you want to read us the motion back, just to clarify?
Yes. Motion to strike 296, paragraph B from the ordinance. Mr. Jones, motion to strike. Mr. Mills, second. And call for a vote. Vice Chair Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Chair Jennings,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Sallow,
Yes.
Robert, you can throw your 2 cents in, even though it's not official.
Back house.
2 cents.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Let's see, we go to, up to section 300B. And this was just a we're going to have to come back to that question of the aggregate job value. That's 300A, but going to B, it's, I added, or for public-related uses such as insurance for and maintenance of public art. You may throw some Oxford commas in there for clarification. I was remiss this time. Anybody have any comments, questions?
Wasn't that somewhere else as well, but
I
not
just thought it-
clear here?
Yeah, just so
Yeah.
it clarified.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
301.
it's in 301D, that what you can use it for.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to include it also in the, okay. 301B, there was a question about the 15,000, but I think that stands. Okay. Public art shall not be spent, and that's okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, this
Oh,
is-
sure, Paul,
It's
I'm
really a
sorry.
housekeeping thing.
Yes.
But I would recommend you keep it, don't add the 1 to that. I think the way it's worded, it says exceeds 15,000, so it works well with the previous definition. I don't think there's any need to add the dollar to the end.
Okay, it was just,
Yeah, because then you've got a gap between 0 and 1 if it's
Okay.
50 cents.
spoken like a true.
Not significant, but.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. Okay, 302C. Okay, I think we're gonna bounce this over to our resident expert, Mr. Stackhouse. No? Doth protest?
It's no longer relevant with the striking of the other paragraph. It makes no sense. It can't, it has to be stricken in association with the other one.
Okay,
And similarly, 302D.
okay. Well, again, I think I'm gonna make this a motion, a second, and a vote. Do I hear a motion to delete section 302.00, paragraph C and D?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Megan, you want to call the roll, please?
I have a
Oh, I'm sorry,
point.
discussion.
What about existing projects? Where,
You mean
like the
in progress?
like the hospital, like Icaria, where there are,
We could exclude existing projects?
yeah, I mean, we already have some projects on private property.
Right.
Good point.
Good catch. I knew you were here for a reason. Okay, where can we put that in?
Well, actually, if you withdraw them, if we withdraw the motion and leave it as it is, then that deals with existing stuff, but the striking of the prior paragraph does not allow the creation of new ones.
Okay. How about the insertion of the word existing, ownership of all existing works of art?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can I withdraw the motion?
You may.
The motion is withdrawn.
Okay, this will stand with the addition of the word, C and D will stand with the addition of the word existing.
You're putting that in A?
What?
Or what, were you putting that in 302A?
No, C,
C.
ownership of all existing works of art.
Okay, so we're leaving it then.
Okay, Paul, do you have any comments or criticisms before we?
Yes, I'll go back and, the committee's spoken as far as their position on these things. It is
Right.
different than what staff recommends. The city manager did suggest that, he would prefer if we all go with this in harmony to the board for the recommendation. And following up, he would like to have a meeting perhaps with the chair and staff to just revisit the discussion of this committee and the results of that discussion and what the draft of the ordinance looks like after this meeting in July, so that this can keep moving forward in hopes of
Okay.
getting closer to that original goal. So, and I'm going to ask anyone, Diane, anything that we didn't bring up from discussion that has been a concern of staff? Kevin, Renee, anybody? I was following along, I think,
I just wanted to make sure that we're leaving it at the million, like 100,000.
yes, we did have a concern from the city standpoint of any city CIP changing that downward from $1 million. So
Okay.
we're going to play a role of developer here too and cry poor, but it's true. We've got a lot of cost increases. We're struggling just to keep projects implementing.
Right. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, the reason you guys are here is so that we can, not only tap your expertise, which is plentiful, but to make sure that we're, compatible with, things in other departments.
And I also want to mention, it is the goal of the city manager to have the city attorney involved, but he wanted our discussion further
That
first
went- Yeah, that goes
before we
without
tie
saying.
up that legal time.
Right. Lucianne?
Paul, I have a question. On the appeals paragraph, just because I'm still trying to understand the way all of the city departments and advisory committees work together, but could you explain why the appeals involve first the Board of Adjustment and then the Planning and Zoning Department?
Noticed that too, and I highlighted it. Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm sure there was good reason when this originally was drafted. We're talking about section 304, it's at the very end. And the way it reads is, administrative decisions by city staff, if there's an appeal, that would be to the Board of Adjustment. And then if there's any disagreements with an act of the committee or the art jury, then that would be the Board of Commissioners. And I think the reason it's written that way is because the commission appoints the art committee, so they would be the one to hear the appeal for that. I don't quite know why the Board of Adjustments would address the city staff decisions.
Yeah, I
but-
can field that one. So, in administering the land development code, and this is part of the land development code, so in any part of the land development code, if the city staff has to make an interpretation of a code provision about how it applies, and that person that's on the receiving end of the code interpretation just thinks that we have factually erred in how we've interpreted the ordinance, then that interpretation, the appeal process does go to the Board of Adjustments, and that's throughout the entire land development code, so I'm going to assume that they were doing that consistent with. I can gather from your question would be really, well, why wouldn't this board be the interpreter? And so that's a question. That's an interesting question, and I think I think that's something that perhaps needs to be addressed, because I can tell you, the Board of Adjustments world is vastly different than the public art world, so, and what they're used to reviewing, so flag that as a question mark, and I think it's something at least worth looking at.
Okay, that's probably a question for Mr. Trask,
Yes.
and/or Mark, city manager, to clarify. Good catch, Lucianne. Okay, is there any other?
Yes, of course.
Of course, Mr. Jones, fire away.
Okay. There's nothing in here that I have found, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that talks about what the Public Art Committee or the city can do with an artwork once it's been acquired through the public art program.
This
Okay.
is true.
And I think we should remedy that. There are a number of things that we can do to remedy it. First of all, we can say that nothing that we suggest in the ordinance is intended to take away anybody's rights under federal copyright law, right? That would be an important thing to say. But we probably should have the right, or, acquire the right from the artist to do certain things, such as make postcards, advertising material,
Thought that was in there.
posters, yada, yada.
The thing about copyright, and you're getting into my bailiwick, is that anything can be negotiated. Is that correct, Robert?
Anything can be negotiated? What do you mean?
In terms of copyright? I mean, the artist can choose to retain copyright. It can.
Well, the artist chooses to retain
Right, it's
copyright.
usually a
I
contractual-
hardly ever give that up.
Right.
Right, but
Right.
it's a contractual arrangement.
Yes,
That-
that's in the contract
Right.
when you sign. The other thing is the artist's rights,
Right.
which is a congressional act, I think. And
Right.
you're usually asked to give that up
Yeah.
and it's in the interest of the city to take those rights away from the artist so they can do things with the sculpture or the art once they own it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a point of contention.
Right.
That's
Diane?
written into the artist contract that Tom Trask puts together
Right.
with the artist.
That's written into the artist contract?
Yes.
Artist contract, yes.
Okay.
Like, for instance, the Elizabeth Indianos mural, the historic mural, we have the rights to make postcards or do, all those kind of things. But that's an individual negotiation between the artist,
Yeah.
Okay.
that they can
So the question becomes, should it be a matter for negotiation between the artist and the city, or should it be in the ordinance that that's what we do?
I think it's implied. No, it is stated in here about a contractual arrangement.
Yes, but it doesn't say what's in the contract.
No, because
Because
that's.
they're,
Doesn't preempt it.
they're all negotiable.
It's, yeah, it's always negotiable.
Okay.
I
I
mean,
think their attorney's going to recommend that you always keep the ability to negotiate.
Yes.
yeah.
We did hit a brick wall with that, with one artist
Yeah.
over the last couple of years, and it was good that we could
Right.
defer to a contract, or else we wouldn't have had a deal.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, but Graham did bring up another interesting point, which I don't think was answered or resolved, was the disposition of existing art that was obtained through public art. Maybe that's best left for another day, because it's a really,
That's your question about what are you going to do with all those paintings
Yeah.
as
Do you-
well?
Do you want to, does that need to be in an ordinance, or?
I don't,
I think that could be
so.
under, the master plan and guidelines and,
Yeah.
guidelines.
that will probably be our next bit of homework, children. That was,
Just,
there-
Bill?
yeah, I'd asked the question earlier on if we were gonna dig into some of these things a little bit further. On 289, I just had a question as to the members and the way they're identified. And I question why we have 5 full members and 2 alternatives. I saw a mix across the different municipalities. A lot of them just had 7 full members. And I'm wondering what the benefit of having alternate members is. Or whether we should just be a full 7 instead of a,
Good
It's a
question.
good question.
I think the alternates are meant to cover you in case you don't have a quorum. So if you increase the permanency of it, then your quorum requirement goes up.
That's right.
well, we can dictate what the quorum is though, correct?
Well, it has to be the majority, so it would be
Before.
necessarily 4 if you
Yeah.
had
Right,
7.
because now quorum is 3,
Right.
with the possibility of using the vote for an alternate if, if voting members are absent.
Yeah. Okay.
Good point, Paul, thank you.
While we're talking about that, do we want to talk about the consideration of alternates as the natural successors when we have a vacancy?
Correct.
I believe that's in the purview of the commission. And I think that's true of all the committees, right, Paul?
That's correct.
I gave it a lot of thought.
So we
yeah.
can't ask for consideration?
I don't think it would be accepted.
I think you as committee members can always make your recommendations to the board, but I think it's ultimately their decision on who they select.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they have kind of the power to,
Right.
they giveth and they taketh away. And there's always that wonderful little without cause clause. Okay. Yes.
In the ordinance, in paragraph 290, number 11, it says, the Public Art Committee shall have the following powers and duties. 11, to pursue matching funds from private and public sources. It doesn't obligate us to do that. However, it does give us the power
Right,
to do that.
right.
And just as a sort of question, being a newbie on the block, have we been doing that?
I've tried. In fact, one of the reasons that Debbie Hennessy was such high consideration for the committee was her ability to get public art grants in the past when she was working in Virginia. I've tried on several occasions to get funding from, federal government sources that I know personally, and I've always kind of run into a brick wall, mostly because they send me to somebody who's, really wants to go to the beach. I've been very frustrated and annoyed. You've kind of hit a sore point with me, but
Sorry.
that's all right. Yeah, I don't know what you want to do with that, Graham. I mean, we can. I mean, it's desirable. It's been tried. I'd like to try some more.
Is there an organization that is a nonprofit currently set up somewhere in Tarpon Springs whose primary purpose is to donate money to the Public Art Fund?
Kathleen Monahan Foundation, off the top of my head.
Okay.
There may be others. I don't know.
Okay, so if we could figure out a way of getting somebody to encourage citizens of Tarpon Springs to leave all or part of their estate to the Public Art Fund, then you'd go along with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, a lot of these cities in here have public art alliances.
Yes.
And what they do is they supply the money to the Public Art Committee, right? And they get that money from the citizens of the community.
Yeah.
And that's a very useful tool.
Yes.
Because it enlarges the whole scope of what the arts are. We are public art, and that's limited. But St. Pete, in St. Pete, they can fund festivals and music events and all those sort of things that add to it. And I guess Tarpon Arts does that in some way, but that's a city thing. The other thing is this is a not-for-profit, really,
Right.
that
Yeah.
does these things. And they have a tremendous amount of sway in a city and how things work, but Tarpon doesn't have such a thing.
Well, I think that's something we should probably look at, because when we had that, the interview with Robin Nye from Tampa, I believe they have that mechanism in place. They have a two-person paid employees, that would be the equivalent of Diane and Megan, and they have a 501c3 nonprofit that we would possibly morph into. But,
It'd have to be an outside nonprofit, yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, it'd be a freestanding 501c3. Because one of the roadblocks that I encountered going after some federal funds is that they can't give money to another municipality. It's easier to give it to a 501c3.
Yes,
So,
many grants are restricted in that way.
right, and, and the thing is, this also goes to past experience I had with a 501c3
I think they
in New
are.
York, was that
That's Trish.
we had
The
to
natural.
funnel some state money through us to do some repairs to an old Georgian mansion. And the amount of the grant was such that it boosted our income to a point where we were now subject to tax and audit. So a lot of 501c3s, really have to be committed to the cause to, want to do that.
Maybe we can add that to one of our next meetings to maybe do some brainstorming on, some
Absolutely.
resources.
Right. Okay, Renee, Paul, Kevin, thank you for your time and expertise. Hope we kept you somewhat involved and amused with our hijinks.
Are we going to go through our other notes on
Sure.
any of this?
Yeah,
Just because I know I made notes all the way through
Okay.
the document, and I think,
okay, Lucianne, do you want to lead
Yeah.
us through this?
yeah.
You folks are welcome to leave.
Or stay.
You can keep it, or I can recycle it for you.
Some of this we've already covered. Maybe we could go section by section, I don't know. But I thought in B, the purpose and intent, that language is so convoluted and repetitive that I would put a period after through the creation of works of art,
Right.
period,
Right.
and strike so that citizens and visitors, blah, 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 the rest of that sentence. It's just
Fine with me.
Where are you?
Yeah, where are you?
287B,
One.
very first.
first
Oh,
paragraph.
287B, okay.
First paragraph.
Can you repeat that?
It's a period after creation of works of art, period,
Yes,
and
creation
then a deletion
of the rest of that
sentence.
sentence. The next sentence would be the requirements of this article. I think we talked about this on 4A, reproductions or unlimited copies of original artwork. I would take out unlimited.
Yeah, we did.
That's 288? No,
288, 4,
4,
A.
right, right. Yes, okay.
On the next page, number 7, I'm confused about what we've done. Have
Oh,
we
wait a
changed
minute,
that?
Lucianne, could we back up for a second?
Sure, sorry.
Okay, Graham suggested replacing landscape elements with special landscape treatments.
Yes,
And then defining that. And
the way
defini-
Gainesville did.
The way Gainesville did.
Oh, I
and
thought that was
where's-
further down.
Yeah, where's Gainesville?
That was 18, that became 18.
They're sort of alphabetical, perhaps. We need to have the text for that. Here we go.
Do you just want to send it in its entirety to Megan?
It says, special landscape treatment means the highest application of skill and aesthetic principles to creating unique planted or designed areas, which may include earthworks, gardens, paving, and water features not normally associated with public facility landscaping. And that's the same as the Port, there's the Bonita Springs one, but spelled correctly.
Yeah, we
And you're pulling that from Gainesville.
Yeah, that's the definition of special landscape treatment from the Gainesville
Could you give a
ordinance.
section and paragraph?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
It's the goals and definitions. It's in the definitions. It's the final definition.
What's the section?
Section 551 at the very beginning,
Okay.
It's on page 2 of Gainesville's.
on
Right.
page 2.
ordinance.
And so, and along with that, in the paragraph that we were talking about here, which is 288A4, the words "and artist-designed landforms or landscape elements" would be replaced with "and special landscape treatments."
Or special landscape treatments?
Or special landscape treatments, yes.
Okay. Lucienne, back to you.
I am, my next comments were on page 6, and they were all about the registry, which we touched on,
Okay.
and I agree with the comment on images. On D on page 6, almost to the bottom,
Right.
we've written in a preference for city residents. I don't know if we want to keep that, or if that's just sort of a consideration.
I was thinking about that. Indicating a preference is not exclusionary.
It's a consideration.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in other words, if two similar projects are proposed, you know, almost identical, and one is being proposed by a Tarpon Springs resident, they would be just, you know, it's like when somebody applies for a civil service job and they might give a couple of extra points for somebody who's a veteran.
Okay,
That's an appropriate analogy.
yep. Those were all my comments that were different from what we've already talked about.
Right, going back to 292, just to clarify, 292C, meetings. If any member fails to attend 3 meetings within the calendar year without cause and without prior approval of the chairman.
Yep, that's what we,
Right,
And that's where we added within a year.
calendar
a
year.
calendar year, yeah.
Lucianne, do you want to continue this, or do you want me?
Thank you for indulging me.
Oh,
That's up
never.
to you.
293, this sentence in red was deleted. 294B, may establish and may maintain. And this goes back, this brings us back to our registry bugaboo.
I never really understood the purpose of that, to be honest with you.
But in the old days, in 2007, when this thing was originally created, nobody ever imagined that the internet was actually going to work.
True.
It just seemed like a mad scientist thing at the time.
Right.
Buy that.
That's when you can connect through your modem.
Yes, if you were lucky, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, it made sense to have, you know, binders full of things.
Right.
Well, and what we have really is,
Like these.
we,
Yes, rather like those.
like, we have this, like, a big Excel spreadsheet with, you know, all that information listed, you know, kind of thing, so it's like, okay,
Well, if that's all it is, an Excel spreadsheet, then,
yeah. With the locations of where things are and things like
Yeah.
that, so.
Does it have some kind of communication tool, like their email address, or?
Well, it depends, and when it was, you know, some of them do, some of them don't, you know. I think, like, if you guys have, most of you probably have a little thumb drive that's got the registry on it, because there's no way to make all the copies of that. So if you don't have the thumb drive, let me know and we'll get a copy made for you.
I think we've got one conversation about artists registry and another conversation about artwork registry
Right,
going on.
okay, yeah, misunderstood.
Yeah, do we need an artist registry?
That was a question, and that was what we changed from shall to may.
Okay.
I mean, is that our,
Obviously, we do need an artwork registry.
is
Right.
that our job?
Yes,
It is? To have a registry?
yeah.
Or
I
is
would
it,
think.
or is it Tarpon Arts' job to have the registry?
Well, I don't, Tarpon Arts, that aspect is really more about the performing arts than the visual arts.
Well, I think it's just coincidental that the ordinance provides for a city employee, and a secretarial type assistance, and it just happens to be Diane and Megan. So I think that's the only overlap we really have with Tarpon Arts.
Well, I mean, we do get involved with the visual arts, as well, but it's with exhibits and things like that, so that kind of qualifies, as visual arts, but it's more educational based, the exhibits than they are. Although we work with outside agencies like the Public Art, or the Tarpon Springs Art Committee, Art Association. We have their plein air and, a lot of their holiday shows and different things. So we do work with them, but we don't have any say in what they show or which artists participate or anything like that. So it's.
Yeah, you're more
it's
of a
kinda separate.
coordination, yeah,
More for the-
organizational coordination.
Right. But what would your artist registry be? Would it be just preferential artists, or, I mean, there's so many different arts agencies that have a list of, like Creative Pinellas and the Pinellas, the St. Pete Art Association and Alliance or whatever, they have a list of agencies. There's also statewide,
The
places.
way this is phrased is that the registry is our method of keeping track of people, artists, who we would involve in commissions. The point I'm trying to make is that really that whole call for proposals and call for artists process has moved beyond individual registries and is out there in the ether with artists responding themselves. So
Exactly.
sort of like trying to herd all the goldfish in the ocean when they're,
Well, that's true, because like, for instance, with the Black Heritage project, that call for artists went out on Cafe. On some of the things, like, some of our smaller call for artists, I'll send that to Creative Pinellas, to the St. Pete, Arts Alliance. I send that to to the Tampa, all the different agencies, and also to some of the state ones as well, depending on what type of medium you're looking for. So,
Yeah, if we've got, like something like the bike racks, which were, very low dollar value, I think that was just circulated locally.
but they also have different associations, like for instance, for Art of Health, when I was looking for chalk artists, I reached out to the Chalk Art Association, and they put out a call from their members. Same thing when I was looking into mosaics, there's like a whole list of Florida mosaic artists that you can, with contact information, that you could send things to. So, I mean, it's kind of like on an individual basis and what you're really looking for as far as medium goes for what I would send your call to artists out to. So like you said, Lucienne, I'm not really sure, unless we just start a registry of those artists that give us proposals, and then, just keep that on file so that if you ever go back, if somebody's shown an interest and you just want to follow up with them at some point in the future.
Why don't we change all artists to any artists?
So then we'll have may establish, may maintain, and any artists.
Yes,
So that would be as loosey-goosey as we could make it.
that's right.
Okay.
Or should be a comma after Artist Registry, the committee. Okay. So the inclusion of digital images, I think, is,
Yeah, I think that's a done deal.
okay, and I think the other thing is pretty clear cut. The very top of page 9, basis of an improved fee schedule. This proposal fee is contingent upon prior authorization by the Public Art Committee and negotiated prior to the artist undertaking the work. Is that pretty clear? Because we did have somebody that showed up with an invoice.
So that wouldn't hardly have been an approved fee schedule then, would it?
No.
Right.
It was rejected out of hand. 295B, kind of struggled with that. Anybody have some,
I don't understand it.
yeah, exactly. You know, maybe the fact that, maybe this actually should be deleted if we delete that paragraph about the developer art.
I would agree.
So delete E.
Yep. And everything just bounces down a notch.
I don't think that's a limit.
That's what, I'm sorry?
I don't think that's a limit.
Right.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
Well, the thing is, if we're placing the art, in other words, I think this would only apply if it was, if someone other than the PAC was placing the art. That's why I think it's irrelevant.
Kind of putting a restriction on yourself.
Exactly.
Or future selves,
Yes.
Right, there you go,
yeah.
just in case they get out of control.
Okay. And then, art design, I guess, you know, at the behest of Paul, we'll keep it at $1 million. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I think 250,000 is just way too low,
Okay.
Yeah.
for sure.
I think
Not gonna
that's a.
get that through.
That was,
I mean,
You took-
we
you
will
took
not
the
fight this
word,
battle.
yeah, Right.
Right.
I said, I don't want to go there with that one.
We
I
just have to
think the next thing
we
is,
just have to win the
Discretion is the
one.
better part of valor there.
right,
But
Okay.
definitely add, this fee must be paid prior to the final
Inspection.
inspection.
we're getting a 1/4% bump just by fact of getting rid of that
Yes.
paragraph B.
right.
Yes.
So,
You know, it's really funny, it's, when you start talking about millions of dollars and percentage this and percentage that, when you think about it, it's not all that much money. A $250,000 project is $2,500. If that's a make or break for a business, I mean, I understand that there are a lot of other things going on, but, I hate to, drag up personal experiences, but I was negotiating to photograph a wedding at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Midtown Manhattan, and the groom was hung up on my mileage fee. And, and they're spending like $60,000 on this wedding. I said, do you know it comes to $35? He was like, oh, yeah, I guess, he was just like totally, and that's what this reminds me of, it's, how much money is it really?
Well, Robert really framed the question, and that is, we're
Value of it.
talking to staff who are working with the developers every day and come from a
Right.
advocacy position for small businesses to a value that this committee is charged with trying to promote in the community, and that's a discussion worth having at the BOC meeting if we have to.
Right.
Maybe we should be the non-fungible public art committee.
There you go.
Put it in language we can all understand now, right?
Yeah, it was funny, I started looking at the,
Still be-
what,
We're
let's go,
still,
okay.
we're still being recorded.
Okay,
But
okay, so the values will go up to $1 million, correct, across the board for consistency?
Yeah, Thank you.
And 1%?
and 1%. And
With
I
a
think-
maximum of $100,000.
Yeah. You'd have to really get up there to get
Does that mean?
10 million.
10 million?
10 million,
So-
yes.
So C1, you changed to 250, that's going back up
Everything's,
to 1 million.
everything's now a million.
Then,
Yeah.
okay.
So why is there a maximum?
That was my question too, I agree. Why is there a maximum?
Why? Shall we delete that maximum?
Why not?
Paul was not keen on
No, he was
changing the
not.
maximum.
No.
Really not keen on any changes.
Yeah. And,
He hasn't dealt with us before.
you know, I don't, you know, there are projects that, for instance, let's just take another one. The proposed hotel down at the docks. That's gonna be more than 10 million.
Well, let's take the cap away.
What's that
You
under
know,
C?
We're charged with recommending what we think is best from our position
Right.
as
They
whatever
can always
to the
knock
Board
it
of
back.
Commission. And I think backing off our best ideas is not right.
Giving up
Agreed.
before we start? Let's not do that.
All right. Okay, so let's delete the but not to exceed per project.
Where are you on that?
300A,
Well,
line 4.
296A
Okay,
for starters.
thank you. Wait a minute, let's backtrack here, 296A.
Think, oh no, sorry, that was a different
Okay,
thing. Where's the maximum?
so where is that on 300?
300,
300A,
but not to exceed.
There too.
sorry, Bill.
It is 296A as well. To a sum of 100,000 per project.
All right.
Yeah,
That needs to be.
right. Not less than
Again,
1% of the aggregate
remember
job
that this
value.
was, right, remember, guys, this was done in '07.
Yeah, so the
Where-
up to the sum of $100,000 per project should be deleted.
I think Lucianne made a good point there, is that we need to stress what we want in this thing.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't matter. I mean, like the, not to exceed $100,000 or the 1% of a big project, that is all gonna go away as soon as they start going one-on-one with each other. I mean, and especially in $10 million projects. I mean, you hardly ever see a 1% come out of that, because there's all this other stuff that gets pulled out of that. I mean, there's a lot of shenanigans that go on in this.
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans,
Robert, I'm
you
shocked and appalled.
So I think, you know, what we can do, the best we can do is we can try to put it in writing, what we want. And-
That's why we left
Yeah.
that paragraph deleted.
And, you know, they're gonna make their pleas, they're gonna make their recommendations, but there, as Paul said, there's gonna be extra work to some of this. You know, but there's extra work to some of this, I
Right.
guess, so.
Yeah. So 296A is not less than 1% of the aggregate job value for the provision of public art. And 300A is before the addition of the public art costs, subject to city budgeting and appropriating such funds. Right?
Okay. Yes, but that 100,000 goes bye-bye.
The 100,000 per project in both cases goes bye-bye.
Okay.
Are there any other places where that appears?
No, the only. Yeah, and paragraph C comes back with the addition of existing artwork. Okay, and D remains. That's-
I can't wait for this meeting.
Okay. I think we have done our due diligence on this. Okay.
One of the questions I did not ask and meant to ask Paul was about the definition of aggregate job value. If in year one, I go out and buy a parcel of land for $10 million, and then in year 2 and 3, I pursue.
Wait a minute, there's an answer, whether it's a phased project. The words phased project, I think, covers your question. Does it not?
Yeah, I guess it does. Phased project, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 3:55, meeting is adjourned,
Thank you.
unless anybody has any objections. In which case you'll be taken out in the hall and flogged. David, we shall miss you.
Yes. Shall miss you guys.
Having just met you.
Yeah, I miss you already.
Well, it's seldom a chance to say goodbye to our committee members.
Right.
They just all of a sudden aren't here anymore. I feel like I'm in
Thank you for your service.
some
Oh,
kind of.
absolutely, I appreciate it being here. It's very exciting.
And at some point, when his schedule opens up, he may decide to reapply.
Yes, I definitely will. Absolutely. Wanted to make it a little bit more formal than informal, and just an email or something like that, so.
Okay. And please, folks, if you know of anybody who would be appropriate to serve on the committee, please have them put an application in with the city clerk. One of the people that's been in there for years, who lives in my complex, just moved. So she's no longer in Tarpon Springs, so that removes yet another person, so from the mix.
And let me see, I was looking for the date here.
Don't forget, we still have a July meeting coming up.
Yes,
July 13th.
I think that was announced at the regular meeting, was it not?
Yeah. Starting on August 3rd, the Citizens Academy resumes. So if you are thinking of telling anybody about filing an application, they might want to also consider filing an application to join the Citizens Academy, because there are some places open. Last I heard from city clerk.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the breeding ground for committee members, because I know at the end they
It's
always.
a great
give-
opportunity for people.
It is, it's a fabulous program.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out, on a date that's not, your regular meeting. And so lots of good work done, so thank you very much. And I'll try, and Megan, and we'll try to decipher all the things that you added and took out and then put back in again.
Would you like me to do it and send it to you?
Will we get a draft before it goes to wherever it
And
needs to go?
I have to talk to them to see when, they want to set up another meeting.
Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to meet with Mark.
Yeah, can we have
Department
a,
head,
But
so I have to
could,
sharpen
could,
my
it
The
would
pencil.
be
draft of
nice
what
if
you
we
did
could see
today.
a draft
yes,
before
if
that
we could
meeting.
have a
Oh, yeah.
marked up draft like the one that Joan did, before it goes to anyone outside of the committee, that would be very helpful, just to check.
We'll probably, I'll probably need to do it on my computer because you said you weren't able to do
Oh,
the
yeah,
editing.
do the,
See, I have the program that allows you to track changes and things like that.
Mine does too, but it just does that thing in the, I can't do the
Does the Chinese?
crossouts.
We'll work it out. We'll work it out.
I don't
Thank you,
think it's a
everybody.
bootleg program, but whatever.
Everybody have a good 4th of July.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
Happy
yeah.
Independence Day. Thank you all again. I know this is tedious, but it's got to be done.
Well, we've been itching to get to it for
Yes.
months, so.
Been a pleasure, sir.
Good luck.
You as well. Can't wait to